This is Michael Popok with breaking news in the likely indictment of Donald Trump this week in the Mar-a-Lago DOJ investigation. Two major events have happened, both of them converging on Donald Trump on the same week, same day, including new reporting today. Number one, the grand jury has been recalled for this week by Jack Smith, and it's the Mar-a-Lago grand jury. There are two or three grand juries that are out there involving Jan 6th, insurrection, grifting money, and Mar-a-Lago. It's the Mar-a-Lago jury that's been asked to return by Jack Smith. Witnesses are all in the can. There are no more witnesses. So the only thing they possibly could be doing is that Jack Smith is seeking the indictment and his team, meaning he's already submitted his prosecution memo, his pros memo, to Merrick Garland for final sign-off and approval. Looks like that happened already. And now he's going in not with a new witness, because there are no more bombshell witnesses after 7 months, but to seek the indictment. And what is the second major factor? Just this morning at 10 a.m., local news is reporting that three major lawyers for Donald Trump that are still representing him, John Rowley, Jim Trusty, Lindsay Halligan, who represent him at present on things related to Mar-a-Lago, now that Tim Parlatore has departed, were seen meeting with the Department of Justice as early as this morning. Now remember, there was a letter that was written about a week ago by Rowley and Trusty, sort of in their own weird way, begging for a meeting. The only reason I can imagine, based on my experience, that there is a meeting this close to the grand jury being reconvened is because they've been informed on the Trump side that the indictment is going to be sought, and this is their last chance, last stop on the train to try to convince the prosecutors otherwise and make a presentation. That's going to be unsuccessful. At this rate, at the amount of information, data, witnesses, and work that's been invested in the case, I don't think there's anything that Jim Trusty can say to Jack Smith, an old friend of his from when they worked at the Department of Justice, that's going to convince Jack Smith that he made a mistake. Oops, typo, sorry, not indicting your client. They can make what's called a white paper submission, which is their brief to a legal brief that argues based on the evidence that they know about that there shouldn't be an indictment, that there shouldn't be an exercise of prosecutorial discretion, then there can be a presentation related to that. But this close to the likely indictment by grand jury, I think it's just a pro forma, let's just have you come in. You want to come in and talk to me one last time? I'm willing to hear from you. Okay, thank you very much. No change in my position. But that's all happening this week. The convergence of those two events, grand jury re-impaneled, recalled by the prosecutor for a good reason. Can't be a witness, got to be indictment, at least in my view. And if I thought that earlier, which I did, because I did hot takes over this weekend, right here on the MeidasTouch network, where I said it was likely there was going to be an indictment this week with the grand jury, it's only been reinforced by the new reporting that Rowley, Trusty, and Halligan have all now gone in to meet with prosecutors, including Jack Smith himself, who we've learned was at today's meeting, to try one last-ditch effort to save their client from himself. Again, having been in the defense position for a long, long time, I can tell you that you can count on two fingers the amount of time in my career I've been able to convince the government not to charge my client. Because, to every hammer, to every hammer, everybody's a nail. And the prosecutors are ready. They haven't invested thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of people power in investigation, turned over every rock, stripped away every attorney-client and executive privilege, brought in every attorney that used to work or currently works for Donald Trump and have them testify. And just to remind everybody, because it is so unusual, what Jack Smith's team has been able to accomplish getting permission through the district court judges of the D.C. Circuit Court, particularly the chief judges, first Beryl Howell, now Jeb Boasberg. They have gotten the following lawyers for Donald Trump stripped of attorney-client privilege to testify about Mar-a-Lago. Evan Corcoran, who had to leave the case as a result. Christina Bobb, had to leave the case and hire counsel as a result. Both those people have criminal defense lawyers. Alina Habba, everybody wonders, Alina Habba is so great. She does nothing in the courtroom. She only appears on television. And a little known fact that doesn't get a lot of press, she got stripped of attorney-client privilege, or Donald Trump did, and she had to testify about Mar-a-Lago against Donald Trump at the grand jury. And then we also have, in addition to all of that, we also have lawyers like Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin, who used to work in the White House and have now had to testify against him. Corcoran, Bob, Habba, Cipollone, Philbin, and Tim Parlatore, who also testified. That is an extraordinary group of lawyers, most of which stripped of their attorney-client privilege, who would have had to testify about Mar-a-Lago against their client, one Donald Trump. So does anybody have any doubt that this week's grand jury is to do final wrap-up and to consider the request for an indictment, to return an indictment against Donald Trump? Why else would the lawyers, the key remaining lawyers, the only ones that are still like holding on by their fingernails before they too have to testify against their client and have their attorney-client privilege stripped away from them, go in to meet with Jack Smith's team? You don't bring in, or you don't allow trustee and Halligan and the other attorney Rowley to go in. If you're Jack Smith, unless you're ready to make your charging decision, you're giving them one last gasp opportunity to change minds. But frankly, the prosecutors know the evidence better than the defense team. There's always this information asymmetry between the defense and the government. The government always knows more at any given moment than the defense team, especially before indictment, before they have to share that information as part of what's called Brady material. In the investigation stage, it is like 10-1, the information disparity, that what the government knows versus what the defense lawyers who are trying to negotiate know. And for every person that, the defense team will say, well, what about this piece of evidence? The government will say, roll the video, clip, document. What else you got? What about this piece of evidence? Here's 5 witnesses that say that didn't happen, or it happened in this way. What else you got? And this is the back and forth, the cat and mouse between government prosecutors and the defense team, especially pre-indictment, because they're allowed to hold on to all and keep it all secret. The grand jury material and proceedings are all secret at this moment. The investigative materials, the files, the reports. Sure, the defense team would love to see it, but they're not going to see it. They're going to have to negotiate, and shadow box with the government. When the indictment comes out and there's an arraignment and there's a discovery that's produced to the other side to allow them to try to craft a defense, that's a different story. But right now, they got to make their case based on what they know. And they got a crackpot client that's not being straight with them. And they know that. And they can't rely on the client to help them through the process. So they got to kind of piece it together. But the government has overwhelming amounts of evidence, especially about Mar-a-Lago. Videotapes, audio tapes, notes of Evan Corcoran, audio recordings of former lawyer Evan Corcoran, all about this case, cooperating witnesses, lawyers who have testified, maintenance people who have testified, kitchen staff who have testified, housekeepers who have testified. And if they don't testify, they got them on video or audio. They got enough, the government has enough evidence to try and convict 10 people for what Donald Trump has done with these cooperating witnesses and ones that they dragged kicking and screaming without attorney-client privilege into the grand jury. That's this week. I'm going to follow it, just like I always do, only on the MeidasTouch network. We're going to find out soon what happened to that meeting this morning. And I think that you're going to know what happened at this meeting when the indictment comes out. And the answer to that is they said, go pound sand. The government said, go pound sand. We're going forward with our indictment. You can come back to us if you want to talk about a potential plea deal for your client after we indict, but not before. Now, I'm sure during these discussions today, a plea deal is discussed, but I'm also as equally sure that Donald Trump has not empowered his lawyers to negotiate a plea deal, because any plea deal has to be a plea to a felony. And there's no way Donald Trump's going to do that. He'd rather have a jury tell him that and fight all along the way and run for president all along the way than to concede and take the felony. He's painted himself into a corner. He says he didn't do anything wrong. He's told his followers, his cult followers, he hasn't done anything wrong. He can't plead guilty now. Kills the fundraising, right? Changes the narrative for his run for office. Hands DeSantis, something that they can run on. He's a felon. Not going to happen. Should happen. Not going to happen. And so we'll know when the indictment comes out this week, the results of that particular presentation. And I'll follow it on hot takes just like this one, because I sit at that intersection of U.S. law and politics. I do it on the MeidasTouch network only. And every Wednesday and Saturday, we kind of curate all of these topics and all this analysis with two other co-anchors, Ben Meisalis, Karen Friedman, Nick Nifolo. We do Legal AF, the leading podcast at law and politics intersection. And you can get it on every place you get your audio podcast and on YouTube on the MeidasTouch network. And you can subscribe for free. And you can follow me on all things social media at MS Popok. And if you like this content, give me a thumbs up. It helps with the content, quality of the content, quantity of the content, keeps it coming to you. And you can open up a chat with me in the chat. And I've been known to jump on and we can open a dialogue with each other. But for right now, this is Michael Popok reporting for Legal AF.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.